Hello and welcome to RCTV, Reading's Community Access Station. Today, Deval Patrick, the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has stopped by the studios to talk a little bit about his spending plan that he's recently unveiled. Governor, welcome to RCTV and of course welcome to Reading.
Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be back.
All right. You recently proposed a $34 million spending plan consisting of $838 million in revenue and growth and $1.2 billion in tax proposals. Two of the major areas that you would like to tackle are education and transportation.
Right.
So let's start a little bit on education. One of your stated aims is to help make colleges more affordable. Mm-hmm. I just recently put a daughter through school, so I know.
So you're still hurting.
Still hurting a little bit, yeah. How do you propose that? How can we help lower costs through this new plan?
Well, let me take a step back first, and that is to say that this is a growth plan. This is about choosing to accelerate the growth that we've had in the Commonwealth and expand opportunity. And so we have greater and greater needs for better and better prepared workforce and a strong citizenry. And one of those strategies and a winning and working strategy is making college more affordable. We have a program in Massachusetts called Mass Grants, which is the principal scholarship program, basically, to defray the cost of college. And that has been cut and cut and cut over 20 years. And so we're proposing to substantially recapitalize that and to make it more broadly available to people so that the buying power of 20 years ago comes back.
Great. Another plan, as far as the education, you talked about turning our community colleges into platforms for skills training.
Right.
Do you envision them as becoming specialized schools, or do you see a general curriculum tailored to what the needs are, the commercial needs are, the business needs are of today?
Well, more the latter. Most community colleges, and I think all should, have a dual mission. One is as a way to enable people who are not quite ready for four-year college to get ready for four-year college. But at the same time, we have all these unmet needs. You know, there are 240,000 people looking for work right now, and 140,000 vacancies. Can you imagine? And many of those vacancies are in so-called middle skills jobs, meaning jobs that require a little bit more than a high school degree, but not necessarily a four-year degree. And they're in advanced manufacturing, they're in the life sciences and lab technicians and so forth. And so the community colleges can be much more tuned into those needs in the regions where they operate, the commercial needs in the regions where they operate, and helping young people and middle career people get ready for those middle career jobs.
I know you're hoping to increase Chapter 70 school aid by $226 million. Some of the local programs have been cut in recent years due to budget cuts and so forth. Do you see this money used to help restore those programs, or are you hoping they'll be used for new projects?
Well, I'm a great believer in educating the whole child, and that means high standards and expectations in the traditional academic courses. It also means experiential learning and art and music and exercise, service learning, for example. There are all kinds of different strategies for reaching kids. And it also means, and something I find is not so popular with the kids, but it's pretty popular with the educators, and that is extended learning time, a longer school day. First time I mentioned that idea out loud was in front of 600 middle schoolers in Middleborough, I think it was, and I nearly did not get out of the room alive. But I think that there are ways in which we have to acknowledge that for a third or fourth grader, you know, their chance is right now. They don't get to sit out the third and fourth grade until the recession is over or until we get around to being able to invest in them. And I think we have to be thinking that way, both in education and in transportation, out a generation, not just out the next budget cycle or the next election cycle.
Well, nice segue into transportation. One issue that's noticeable to anyone that drives around the Commonwealth's roadways is the poor condition of many of our bridges. Mm-hmm. Is the repair of our bridges high on the priority list?
Has to be. For safety reasons, Alan, but also because the longer we wait to reinvest in them, the more costly it will be over time. And as much as I like the Big Dig as an engineering project, I will say I liked it better at $5 billion than $22 billion. But the fact is that over the 15 years of the Big Dig project, we starved investment in our transportation infrastructure everywhere else outside of downtown Boston, and we have to turn that around. So we have bills to pay on account of the Big Dig. We have deferred maintenance to deal with. in order to make our transportation network stronger and more efficient and more effective and more modern. And we have a handful of expansion projects that we also ought to do to unlock economic opportunity in different parts of the Commonwealth. So we have a comprehensive package we've put forward. It's a growth strategy because those kinds of investments, just like in education, actually do create jobs in the short term, and they make a stronger community over time.
Now, I mentioned bridges, but I assume that's also true for our roadways and maybe the railways?
You bet, you bet. We have, our citizens are telling us they want more transportation, not less. And they're not, they want, in town, they want the subway to run later in the, outside of the greater Boston area. They want buses on the weekends. They want the commuter rail to be up to date and comfortable and on time and safe. They want roads that don't cause so much wear and tear on our cars and trucks when we're driving them. And they're not, these are not frivolous or unreasonable wants. They're perfectly sensible wants and needs for a transportation network that reflects a leading edge economy as we have and as we're trying to keep and build on.
Well, you mentioned keeping the trains running and the buses running later. Do you see that as a convenience, or do you see it as an engine for creating more growth?
I think it's an absolute engine for creating growth. And by the way, that's historically true. Everywhere the train, going back to Lincoln's time, everywhere the train has stopped, it's been good for the local economy. And the frequency and convenience of trains and other modes of transportation has a whole lot to do with whether you participate in this innovation economy that we're building or you don't. So there are parts of the Commonwealth, the fourth and fifth largest cities in the Commonwealth down on the South Coast, are completely cut off by rail from the economic activity closer into Boston. In western Massachusetts, the economic orientation is much more north-south than it is east-west. They look more to New York than they do back to Boston. So figuring out how to make those connections work for people and for companies has to be a part of our strategy as well. And this is all in the plan that we've laid out, and we've proposed a way to pay for it as well.
Great. How about the long-discussed Green Line extension into Somerville? Is that part of this plan? Or
has to be. That's actually an obligation that my predecessor, Governor Romney, signed on to without a way to pay for it. And it's an important project. He was right to commit to it. But now we have to come up with a way to pay for it, and we've made proposals to do so.
Are there any other proposed extensions to the existing green, red, orange, and blue lines?
Well, there are modernizations. There's a lot of interest in the blue line continuing up to Lynn, for example. There's a way to do that with a new technology that basically runs a subway car on commuter rail tracks. A really interesting new technology which is being used in a few other places. We can try things like that. There is basic update to, we're running 40-year-old trains on the red line today. I think 30-year-old trains on the orange line. I mentioned the new rail line down to the South Coast. We're going to start a pilot train down to the Cape, to Hyannis from Boston this coming summer. The high-speed rail out to Springfield, for example. These are all things. They're not luxuries. They really are about whether we're going to have a transportation system that enables the innovation economy that we're building here in the Commonwealth.
Okay. Well, we've talked about a couple of the big plans. Let's talk about how we're going to pay for it. The big issue, the taxes.
Right.
There's a plan to increase the income tax from 5.3 up to 6.5. That would mean the median household could translate to maybe another $1,000 to $1,200. I know there are offsets like larger deductions and a lower sales tax. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the end result will sufficiently cover the costs of these?
I do, and I will say that just a friendly correction. We're rebalancing, you're right. The sales tax would come down to 4.5, and the income tax would go up from 5.25 to 6.25. And we would double that's okay. We're in the margin of error there. We would double the exemption so that the threshold where the income tax would kick in would be higher. And the effect is that for people making between $0 and $40,000, their total taxes, state and local, would actually go down a little bit. For people in the $40,000 to $60,000 range, they'd be about the same. And for $60,000 and up, we pay a little bit more, depending on our ability to do so. That's one way to do it. There's more than one way to do this. The question is, for me, that we abide by three principles. One, that we raise enough to have an investment strategy over the next decade that really does deliver the kind of transportation and education systems that we know will make us stronger. The second is, in the case of transportation, that the funds be dedicated, so they can't be diverted to some other good idea that another governor or that I may have, because we have to show that discipline, I think, over time. And the third is that we end up with rates that are competitive. And with this rebalancing, the total tax burden would be lower, in fact, than all of our border states, with the exception of New Hampshire, and in that case we'd be within about a point or two, and quite comparable with the other states elsewhere in the country with which we compete.
So with something like the sales tax, you think we may be more competitive with New Hampshire and maybe the other states?
Well, I think it helps. And again, but they're companion pieces. You know, it would be very, very difficult to cut the sales tax as much as I propose without raising the income tax. And what we have to do is, in the net, come out with more revenue so that we can make these kinds of investments that improve our economy.
You also talked about reducing some redundant fees and unnecessary bureaucracy. Do you have any examples?
I do. You know, for example, we took 6 different transportation agencies and collapsed them into one. We shut down the Turnpike Authority, which had outlived its usefulness. That move alone has saved hundreds of millions of dollars. We have you know, we've changed the benefits systems for state employees to align them more with what is happening in the private sector. We've worked with local communities to cut down on municipal health care costs, for example. Things like this that a lot of folks have talked about for a long time. Working with the legislature, working with local authorities, we've accomplished. It's also plain to me you're never done with the work of reform in any successful organization, and that reform alone is not going to be enough to get us to where we need to get.
All right, I'm going to change the subject a little bit, subject near and dear to my heart. I live in a town, a New England town, which of course, as you know, is different than anywhere else in the world. We have a government with selectmen and town meeting where everybody can be involved if they'd like.
Very strong part of our culture.
And I know that you've lived in some towns in the western part of the state, a smaller one and a larger one toward Boston. How do you see the importance of volunteerism? Working in a town, we have our professional staff, of course, but volunteerism is what makes the town work. How do you see encouraging people?
You know, when I grew up in Chicago, which is a great big city, and much of that time on the South Side in poverty, and you know, a lot of people around us really struggling. But there was a very strong sense of community, because it was a time when every child was under the jurisdiction of every adult on the block. If you messed up down the street in front of Ms. Jones, you know, she'd straighten you out as if you were hers and then call home. So you get it 2 times. And I think what those adults were trying to get across to us was that they had a stake in us. That community is understanding the stake you have, not just in your own dreams and your own struggles, but in your neighbors as well. And so I see service and civic engagement as about affirming that sense of community, that we have a stake in each other.
Well, thank you very much. Again, this is Governor Deval Patrick of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and this has been RCTV, Reading's Community Cable Access.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good to be with you.